Hi, thanks for joining us with our storytelling evening with Alan Salazar. Welcome, Alan. We're so happy to have you for the Santa Maria Public Library. And we are going to have an evening of storytelling. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it on over to Alan to start this, and we will have a chance for some questions afterwards.
Haku Hamanat Netawan Alan Salazar Puchuk Yayak Pasekva Nukasin Tapu Chigoyanga Nukasin. Hello, I'm Alan Salazar. Puchuk Yayak is fast runner. I have a strained hamstring, so I won't be challenging anyone to any races tonight. Give me a couple months, I'll come to Santa Maria, and I'll be ready for any challenges. I was born in the village of Pasekva, so I come from the village of Pasekva, which is San Fernando, California, and where I get my indigenous ancestry, which is my father's side of the family. We trace back to the village of Chigoyanga, which is a Tataviam village in the Santa Clarita Valley, where Magic Mountain is built, and the Chumash village of Tapu, which is in Simi Valley. In honor of Veterans Day, this is my pop. He was a Marine. He fought in World War II in Saipan and Okinawa. And like I said, it's where I get my Chumash and Tetavion ancestry. My ancestors on my father's side of the family were brought to the San Fernando mission starting in 1799. So basically I believe my fourth or fifth, probably my fifth great grandparents were some of the first people brought to the San Fernando mission, were enslaved and forced to build the mission and work there for several generations. This is my grandmother and grandfather. My grandmother Vera Ortega Salazar, that's my grandmother right there at her christening when she was, I believe, about 15 or 16 years old, at her confirmation. All born and raised in San Fernando because of that San Fernando mission period. This gentleman right here is my great-grandfather, Antonio Maria Ortega. My great-grandfather was also born in San Fernando, worked at the San Fernando mission for a better part of his young life. He was born in 1849. So he was born at a time when someone could have killed my great-grandfather, and they wouldn't have been sent to jail, or they wouldn't have been sent to prison. They would have been paid a bounty. So when he was born in 1849, when California became a state, our first governor proclaimed he was going to exterminate all California Indians, and he came that close to doing it. The population, over 90% of the population died or were killed during the first 25 years of California history, which was the bounty system, where they actively went out and paid vigilantes and ranchers and early settlers to kill California Indians, and then would pay them bounties for it. And they had one of the highest paid and best militia cavalries whose sole job was to exterminate California Indians. There were over 300 massacres of Indian villages from 1849 to 1873. I think there was even a few after 1873. As a young boy, we moved to Hanford, California, where my mom was from. Hanford, for those of you who aren't familiar, Santa Maria, you might be familiar with Hanford, California, in the San Joaquin Valley. A lot of people move over from the San Joaquin Valley to the Central Coast area. And Hanford's about 30 miles south of Fresno. So as a young boy, we moved from San Fernando to Hanford, where my mom is from. My mom is mostly Portuguese and English. So I tell people I became a Native activist when I was about 6 years old, and probably even prior to that. And the reason I say that is my mother and father, in the 1950s, we moved to Hanford in 1953 when I was 2, and stayed there to 1963 when we moved to Bakersfield. And when we lived in Hanford, my mother and father were one of the few interracial couples in Hanford, California. So I tell this story all the time. I knew who liked my father and who hated my father. I knew which one of my mom's family members, my grandmother, my aunts and uncles on my mom's side, I knew which ones hated my father and which ones liked him. And none of them ever came up to me and told me that they hated him or they liked him. I knew that as a very young boy by just the way they exchanged greetings, the way the looks and things like that. And they hated him for this, the color of his skin. When I say I became a Native activist very young, I'm extremely proud of this picture. This is me right here. This picture was taken in 1957. This is my pop right here. Like I said, he was a Marine, fought in World War II, once a Marine, always a Marine. And me and my older brother wanted Mohawk haircuts for the summer because we thought those were Indian haircuts and we wanted to be cool. And my pop got one too. And everybody in Hanford knew who we were. We were the wild Indians and we were proud of it and we weren't going to hide it from anybody. So I was raised to be proud of my Indian heritage, my indigenous, my native, whatever adjective you want to use, Native American, First American, Indigenous American. I was raised to be proud of my native ancestry. On my birth certificate, it says Indian. And I was born in 1951. That was very unusual. On my brother, who was born in 1947, it says Indian. On my sister, who was born in 1942, it says Indian. My little brother, he's a little brother, but it says the same thing on his. He was born in 61. We were raised to be proud of our native heritage. Let me give you a little background on the Chumash, and then I'll get into the storytelling. Where you people live, you're in what is considered northern Chumash. So I want to honor the northern Chumash people who have been in the Santa Maria, the Pomo, Arroyo Grande, Five Cities area for tens of thousands of years. The Chumash are one of the oldest tribes in North America. The oldest human remains found in North America are the leg bone of a Chumash man found on Santa Rosa Island in 1959. It's called the Arlington Spring Man. And I've been to the Arlington Spring where they found that leg bone on Santa Rosa Island, and to that village site, which is over 13,000 years old. That leg bone, when they did carbon dating testing, was determined to be between 13,000 to 13,500. Those are the oldest human remains in North America. The Chumash, my ancestors, are one of the oldest tribes in North America. The Tataviam were a very small tribe, and I'm going to share a couple of Tataviam stories with you in just a moment. The Tetavion Territory goes from around San Fernando north into the Santa Clarita Valley, out towards the desert, towards Palmdale, Lancaster, and up into the mountains to about Gorman. Like I said, we're a very small tribe. We were close to extinction. In the 1900 census, they only listed 24 Tetavion people left. So like I said, we were one of those tribes that was close to extinction. And I'll talk about the stories in just a moment. One of the things that I've been involved with, and let me see if I can find a good picture, is Chumash canoes. The Chumash word for canoe is tamol. So I have helped build and paddle in these plank canoes. They're flat bottom, very heavy. They carry great amount of weight. You can take this 24-foot tamol out into the ocean and catch 400 pounds of fish. They're incredible seagoing canoes, and the Chumash have built them, they believe, for at least 3,000 years. I think for 7,000 years. I've been involved with what we call our crossings, and this is carrying, when we finish the crossing, and we're carrying the tamol up on the beach at Santa Cruz Island. And this picture was taken after we paddled from Channel Islands Harbor in Oxnard, California, out to Santa Cruz Island. Something that the Chumash people did thousands of times throughout the year to take trade items out to the Chumash people that lived on the islands and to fish. So that's a little bit of kind of general history about the Chumash. If you have any questions, please, at the end here in about another 30 minutes, I'm going to open it up for Q&A. So if you have questions about my stories or questions about the Chumash, I'll try my best to answer them. And you'll make me extremely proud if you ask a question about the Tataviam, because like I said, we're a little tribe and no one knows very much about us. Before I start the storytelling, I don't know, can you see these little small beads right here? If someone could see them, raise their hand in the thing so I could see that. Yes, okay, good. The word Chumash comes from these little shell beads. These were used like money. So we were shell bead makers, shell bead money makers. That's what the word Chumash means. The word Tataviam is what the Kidinumuk, which is the tribe north of the Chumash, of the Tataviam, going towards Fort Tejon and almost into the San Joaquin Valley. The Kidinumuk called us the Tataviam, which means people facing the sun. So those are the two meanings of the two words, Tataviam, people facing the sun. Chumash actually means shell bead money or shell bead money makers. It's what the two tribes are well known for. The first story I'm going to share with you is Tata the Tataviam Toi. Let me explain. In the Chumash culture, there are a lot of traditional myth and legends that were saved, and I'll share a creation story with you in a moment, or towards the end of my storytelling. And there are probably dozens and dozens of stories that were saved. There's a wonderful book called December's Child, and it has all kinds of coyote stories and creation stories and stories of various animals, of the swordfish and even of the plants, datura and things like that. But the Tatavion, being such a small tribe and close to extinction, most of our stories are lost. I've only been able to find 2 or 3, and I've for over 25 years I've been telling Chumash stories, how we got hands like lizard instead of paws like coyote. A wonderful story that I learned from Ernestine de Soto Ignacio about coyote and woodpecker. That's the story I'm going to share with you a little bit later on. A story I learned from a Chumash elder from Santa Ynez, Tony Romero, a wonderful storyteller, about Muhu, the great horned owl. So there's a lot of Chumash stories, but like I said, there's very few Tatavion. So what I've done for the last couple of years is write stories in the spirit of my Tataviam ancestors. If I had lived 500 years ago and was in a Tataviam village and I said, you know, I'm going to write a story about a small little bird, a toi, because they just fascinate me, which is what I did. This is a toi. It's actually a California toi, but since this toi, Tata, was born near the village of Painga, which is where modern-day Castaic is, hence he is a Tataviam toi. Toys are a small bird. They're a little bit bigger than a sparrow, a little bit smaller than a robin. They stay in the brush. They nest in the brush. They eat bugs and seeds. They hop and run. And as a last resort, they'll fly. And I noticed them about 10 years ago, working on a job in Simi Valley, where there was a lot of natural brush, mule fat, and coyote brush, and herba santa, and all this. There's all these little birds hopping, and I would ask the biologist, "What's that little bird? He never flies hardly." And I was just fascinated because I'm a runner, and they run real fast and hop and everything. And he told me they were the Toei, and I started watching them, and I researched them. And then I came up with a story about a Toei. This is a story of a young Tetavion Toei bird. Today we call them California Toeis, but Tata was hatched long ago near the Chitavian village of Painga, near modern-day Castaic Lake in Southern California, hence Tataviam Toei. The Toei are small birds that hop and run from chaparral brush to chaparral brush looking for seeds and bugs to eat. They will occasionally fly, but never very high or very far. Now Tata was a young bird, and when he was young, his parents taught him how to hop and run from chaparral brush to chaparral brush, where to find the best seeds and the juiciest bugs. Tata's parents also taught him how to fly, and they told him over and over and over, Tata, never fly too high above the chaparral, and never fly above the trees. Why? Asked Tata. And his pop said, there are giant killer hawks, falcons, and eagles that will eat you. They're strong, they're swift, they have sharp, sharp talons. Well, Tata was about 5 weeks old, which in the Toei world would have made him a teenager. And being a teenager, he didn't believe what his parents told him. He thought they were just trying to scare him and didn't want him to fly too high for his own safety. So one day, he flew to the top of the little coyote brush that the rest of his family were under looking for bugs and seeds. And when he got up to the top of the coyote brush, he looked to the left, he looked to the right, he looked all around. He didn't see any killer hawks, eagles, or falcons. He saw nothing. Then he flew to the top of an elderberry tree, and he did the same thing. He looked to the left, he looked to the right, he didn't see any killer hawks, eagles, or falcons. He saw nothing. Then he got really brave, and he flew to the top of the biggest tree where Tata and his family lived, an ancient oak tree. And he flew all the ways to the top. It's higher than he ever flown before. And once again, he looked to the left, he looked to the right, he looked all around. He didn't see nothing. And just about then, his friend Juan the Sparrow flew up next to him. And Juan the Sparrow said, Tata, what are you doing way up here? I've never seen you ever fly this high. And Tata told his friend about what his parents had told him, about those killer hawks, eagles, and falcons. And he says, I wanted to see them for myself, so I flew all the ways up here, and I've looked all around, and I haven't seen nothing. And just then his friend Juan said, look up, my friend. And he looked up, and circling high above the two little birds was a big red-tailed hawk with sharp, sharp talons. And the little birds got scared, because just as they saw that hawk, it tucked its wings and dove down at those two little birds. He was going so fast, they hopped into the center of the tree to try and hide. But that hawk wasn't after those two little birds. He flew down and scooped up and killed a rattlesnake. And Tata said to his friend, did you see that? He killed a rattlesnake, a rattlesnake. Holy moly, our parents were telling us the truth. Maybe we should listen to him more closely. And the two little birds looked at each other, and you know what they did? They started to laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh, because they knew they weren't going to listen to their parents any more closely. But actually they did. And from that day on, Tata listened to his parents a little bit more closely. Being a teenager, he acted like he didn't, because even a Tataviam Toei can roll his eyes. I'm extremely proud of my first book. I wrote it during the pandemic, and it has Tatavion history, games like the walnut dice game, and how we make our walnut dice and how we play the game. It has some Tatavion words, if you can see them there. Hamanat, which is hello. The word for elderberry tree is kuar. And Then it also has what I think is the most important part of the book. The illustrations of our book, the illustrations by Mona Lewis, were all done with natural pigments. Little soft stones that I found while I was out hiking, little soft stones that she would take and pound and grind up and make her own paint. So all these beautiful pictures, all these drawings were made with natural pigments. Most of them in Tetavion Territory, some from Chumash Territory, and a very few from up in Oregon because we couldn't find any blue and green for the sky and the grass. Mona, being a teacher, gives a simple little 4-step lesson of how to draw a toei, how to make your own paint, how to make black paint out of charcoal. Excuse me, out of charcoal in your own fireplace. A little story about that. Mona says to me, "Alan, I need to make some black paint." So I have some little willow twigs and some elderberry twigs, even some white sage little twigs. But I need a metal tin. And she goes, will you go down to the store and see if they have any metal tins? And I go, okay. And I go down to the store, and they have a big round metal tin full of cookies. Now, I'm a team player, and I think it's important to be a team player. So I bought that metal tin full of cookies, ate all the cookies, so we could put those sticks in that metal tin, wrap it with aluminum foil, put it in our fireplace right here, and then let it be in the fire for about 3 or 4 hours. And then we had charcoal, and she made her own black paint. There's some pages to color for the young kids. And this to Mona Lewis, the illustrator. As you can see, she's very talented. You can tell by the illustrations. This is the next story I want to tell, a creation story. But as you can also see, she's a beautiful woman. The reason I'm pointing this out, because she's my fiance, and during the pandemic, we go, okay, we can watch every episode of The Crown, and then binge watch other shows, or we can work on our books. And that's what we did. This next story I'm going to share with you is a Tataviam creation story. There are several Chumash creation stories. The Rainbow Bridge story, which you're going to have to invite me back, and I'll tell that story another time. Like I said, there's a story of how the Sky people created the Chumash people. The Sky people are Sky Coyote, Sky Lizard, Sky Eagle, the Sky Snake, the Sun, the Moon, and Morning Star. And they had a great meeting to decide what the Chumash people would look like. As you can tell, we're all extremely good looking. I apologize. And Coyote wanted the Chumash people to at least have one thing like him, and they said, okay, we'll let the Chumash people have paws as hands. And we almost had paws as hands, but just before Coyote was about to put his paw print in the sacred stone, signifying that the Chumash people had paws as hands, the lizard ran between his legs and put his handprint. And when the other Sky people looked at the handprint of the lizard, they liked that much better. So there's a lot of several Chumash creation stories, and all tribes have creation stories. So I wanted to come up with a Tataviam creation story in the spirit of my Tataviam ancestors. And this is one of the things I'm extremely proud of. This picture right here is my grandson, my son, and myself, with the guidance of Mona, working on some of the illustrations. My grandson Caden is working on kind of one of the backgrounds of the mountains, and then my son and I are working on the spider, and you're going to see the spider in just a moment. I hope my daughter isn't too upset that we didn't get a picture of her, but she helped also with the illustration, so it's what made the book very special. Both the Chumash and the Tataviam, one thing that we have in common is that we're both clan tribes. The Tataviam and the Chumash are neighbors. So when you come down to the Ventura area, and you get to Ventura and you start going towards Simi Valley, you're still in Chumash territory. When you start going towards Piru, you're still in Chumash territory. But when you get past Simi Valley, east of Piru, you're in Tetavion territory. We are neighbors, and we have been for thousands of years. So we intermarried. My family being Chumash and Tataviam, there's nothing unique about that. It was a very common thing. So we're both clan tribes, which means we use the animals as teachers. So I thought, once again, if I had lived 1,000 years ago, and I wanted to tell my kids and my grandkids, how were the Tatavian people created? I would think about all the animals that lived around us, that still live around us today. There's just not as many of them. Although there used to be wolves, they're gone. There used to be grizzly bears, they're gone. But we still have some mountain lions and bears and coyotes and a lot of deer and little small creatures. And I believe very strongly that we would be better off if we sent our kids to school and said, listen to your teacher. You will learn a lot from your third grade teacher this year. But also, after school, on the weekends, take your kids for walks and have them watch the birds. Right now, the woodpeckers, especially the acorn woodpeckers, and we'll tell a story about that in just a moment. The woodpeckers are gathering the acorns, and then they're putting them in holes in the trees that they've pecked over years and years. And they'll fill up those holes with acorns, not 4 or 5, not 15 or 20, hundreds of acorns, so they have food to get them through the winter. And then by the end of the winter, all those acorns will be eaten and be gone. Some they'll forget about, and they'll fall out and drop and germinate and start new trees. So the animals have always been teachers for many tribes. So this story happens near the ancient village of Chogoyanga, where my Chitavian ancestors are from, along the shores of the Santa Clara River. I tell this story in the spirit of traditional Tatavion myth and legend. As I said, many of our stories have been lost. I've researched my tribe, and I use that knowledge as a guide in this story. I said we're a clan-based tribe, so we've always looked to the animals as teachers. We have a bear clan, an eagle clan, a turtle clan, a coyote clan, to name just a few. And this is the story. Long, long ago, there were no people living in Tetavion Territory. For thousands and thousands of years, only the animals and plants lived in Tetavion Territory. In those days, the animals had a great council, the Tetavion Council of Animals. This council consisted of bear, eagle, deer, lizard, turtle, raven, spider, and coyote. It was the first meeting of spring. The council met in a sacred cave in the mountains just north of the Santa Clara River. It's known today as Bower Cave. And here are the animals meeting in Bower Cave to determine what the Tatavian people would look and how they would survive. Bear had just awakened from his winter sleep. During his hibernation, he had a dream. He dreamed of a new creature that stood and walked on 2 legs. Bear had heard from his cousins who lived way up north that there were creatures that the polar bears called people, and Bear knew he was dreaming of the Tatavian people. So Bear called the council of animals together to decide what the Tatavian people would look like and how they would survive. Each member of the council wanted the Tatavian people to look like them. Coyote was especially proud of his appearance. His eyes, his ears, and even his tail would look great on the Tatavian people. And Coyote argued with all the other animals about every little thing. This great debate went on and on and on. That's how Coyote envisioned the Tatavian people, what they would look like if they looked more like him. Eagle said, since the Tatavian people will stand on two legs, their feet are very important. Coyote naturally suggests a pause for Tatavian feet. And Spider said, maybe the Tatavian people should have 4 feet and 4 hands. All the other animals said, no, at the same time. That's the picture that me, my grandson, and my son and daughter helped with. Simple. But Eagle knew who had the best feet. Eagle asked Bear to show everyone his feet. When the others saw Bear's feet, they all agreed that Tataviam should have feet like Bear. Well, everyone except Coyote. Coyote said the Tatavian people should have yellow eyes like mine. The model for this picture is a young Tatavian woman, and she's from the Ortiz lineage. Beautiful young woman. Lizard agreed. It's because lizards have yellow eyes. But, hold on here. All the other animals thought brown eyes like deer's were better. Well, everyone except Coyote. That's my second cousin, Ben Cook. Then Coyote said the Tataviam should have a tail like mine. Turtle said, no, a tail like mine. Bear stood up and said, no, the Tatavian people should not have any tail. We have to keep some things so we will be special. And all the animals agreed. Well, everyone except Coyote. The turtle stood up as tall as she could and said, what about color? Coyote jumped up and said the Tatavian people should be a little grayish, a little reddish, a little tan, maybe some beige, while a little white and black scattered about. Turtle said, so, Coyote, you want them to have your colors. I think they should be just one color. Turtle slowly looked all around. He looked at all the animals very carefully, checking everyone's fur, feathers, and scales. Turtle looked at everything, the plants, the sky, and even the ground that they stood on. He looked at everything. And after a moment of thought, Turtle said, the brown color of Mother Earth is so beautiful. I think the Tataviam should be brown. We all come from Mother Earth, and so do the Tatavian people. All the animals agreed, except Coyote. After several days and several nights, the Tatavian Council of Animals had decided on everything that the Tatavian people would look like. And they were all very happy, except Coyote. Deer said, our work is done. May we go home? Raven, who had sat quietly, cawed and cawed as loud as he could to get everyone's attention. The Tatavian people should also have something else from all the animals. Bear, with a confused look, said, what are you talking about, Raven? We've decided on everything about the Tatavian people. And Raven cawed and cawed again, really loud. He says, all of us have our own gift, our own power, our own spirit. We are all teachers. We teach our young how to survive. We teach how to hunt in a good way. We teach how to gather plants in a respectful way. We teach which plants are for food and which are for medicine. I think the Tatavian people should have the gifts, the powers, and the spirits of all of us. Some of the Tatavian people will have raven spirit. Some will have bear spirit. Some will have eagle spirit. Some lizard spirit. Some turtle spirit. Some deer spirit. Some spider spirit. And most importantly, some will have coyote spirit. Raven continued, the Tatavian people will be fast, slow, tall, short, fierce, timid, hardworking, intelligent, beautiful, playful, strong, and clever. Clever like me, dude? Asked Coyote. It was Coyote that started the dude thing, by the way. Yes, clever like you, Coyote. And all the animals agreed, even Coyote. And now you know who created the Tetavion people and why we still respect all the animals. They are teachers and we can learn from all of them. Every one of us have our own gift, our own power, our own spirit. We are all connected to Mother Earth. We all need each other to survive, and some believe that the first Tatavian people were over 20 feet tall. But that's another story for another day. So, I encourage everyone here, go out for a hike, sit under the shade of a tree. An oak tree is a great tree to sit under. Watch all the animals, and maybe you'll learn something about the animals and about yourself. The Tataviam and the Chumash have done this for thousands and thousands of years. So, in this book, we have a little bit more about animal teachers. What are some of the powers of bear, eagle, coyote, spider? I think it's important. I added spider in there because we've forgotten about the small creatures, and we can learn lessons from small creatures just as much as we can from the big strong ones. There's a lot of Tatavion history in here, and more about Mona's wonderful illustrations about some of the plants that I mentioned. Soap root, how we make our clapper sticks from elderberry. So it's more than just a story. Mona went in a little bit more in depth on how she makes the pigments and where some of them came from. So this right here shows the charcoal was, we used willow branches and mussel shells. So we get mussel shells when we walk down the beach, and she pounds those up. Some shells from Jalama Beach, which is not that far from you, back towards Nipomo. No, not Nipomo. Just west of Buellton and that area there. We have some from along the Santa Clara River, even some from Santa Rosa Island, and probably I'm not sure if this would be Chumash or Selenian, and it'd probably be right on the border. But if you've ever been to the little town of Harmony, we stopped in Harmony coming back from Cambria one time, and found some beautiful soft stones that made a beautiful gray. So like I said, all the illustrations that Mona does in our books are made from natural pigments. This is Mona's book that just came out that we got yesterday. And this whole book, this beautiful book, as you can see, it's big and thick. It's all about how to make paints from plants, from stones, from ochres, from bark, from trees, and then crafts that you can do with your kids. So hopefully, when things settle down, Mona and I will come up and bring our books and read them, and I'll tell those stories again at the library and have a book signing, and people can buy the books. I shared this with the librarian. If any of you want to write this down, the W's: Sun Sprite Handwork.com, and that's where you can order Tata the Tataviam toy. The creation story and Mona's book will be available in about 4 weeks, but we're taking pre-orders on those. I want to share a story about Coyote, and I learned this story from Ernestine de Soto. It's a beautiful story, one of my most popular stories. And the fascinating thing about this story is that Ernestine, who's a Barbareño Chumash woman from the Santa Barbara area, learned the story from her mom. I just realized, oh, okay, I'm good. Her mom learned it from her mom, and her mom learned it from her mom, and her mom, and her mom. It is this story of Coyote and Woodpecker has been passed down through the women of this Barbareño Chumash family for at least 6 generations. And if any of you go to Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History, go into their gift shop, and there's a wonderful video called 6 Generations about Ernestine de Soto and her family. It's a truly incredible story of survival. And she graciously allows me to share this story as long as I acknowledge her and her family. And her mom, Mary Ignacio, who was the last speaker of a Chumash language that spoke a Chumash dialect fluently. The Chumash languages are making a comeback, and there's languages all over. I'm going to tell this story, then open it up for Q&A. I'm a tea drinker. I hate coffee. That's a whole other story again. One day a coyote was walking along and he heard this noise. And he looked up in the tree, and way up in the tree was a woodpecker just pecking away. And the coyote sat there for a moment, and then the coyote looked up into the tree and he yelled up. The coyote yelled up to the woodpecker. He goes, "Woodpecker, woodpecker, tell me, how did you get such a beautiful red head? Tell me, so I can get one too." The woodpecker, he just kept pecking, thinking surely after a few minutes the coyote would go away and leave him alone. This coyote was a big pest. He yelled and yelled at the coyote, yelled at the woodpecker all day. 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours. "Woodpecker, woodpecker, tell me how you got such a beautiful red head. Tell me, so I can get one too." The woodpecker just kept pecking, thinking surely by the end of the day, Coyote's going to get tired and bored and go away and leave him alone. No, the sun was going down. Coyote was still yelling at him. "Woodpecker, woodpecker, tell me how you got such a beautiful red head. Tell me, so I can get one too." The woodpecker, he realized this coyote was a big pest, and he was going to probably keep him up all night yelling at him. But he was pretty sure that Coyote was so jealous and envious that he could tell him anything. So the woodpecker, he stopped pecking. He goes, "Hey, Coyote, you want a red head like mine?" Coyote goes, "Yes, yes, please, please, please tell me." He says, the woodpecker told Coyote, he says, "Go get 2 sticks, find a fire, and reach into the fire with those 2 sticks, and get a red coal, and put that red coal on your head. It'll turn it red." The woodpecker was an acorn woodpecker. He had a beautiful red head. And that's why Coyote was yelling at him. He wanted that red head like him. Well, he was so jealous and envious, he didn't think about it. And he went and found 2 sticks, found the fire, reached into the center of the fire, got a red coal, put it on his head, hoping it would turn it red like the acorn woodpecker. And it burned his head, and the coyote started yelping and crying. He had to go run and jump into the Santa Maria River and swim around and cool off his head. And while he did that, the woodpecker flew miles and miles and miles and miles and miles and miles away and found a tree where no one would find him, out in the middle of nowhere. I think he was near Bakersfield, but I'm not sure. Could have been Taft. So he could peck in peace and quiet. Now, those of you that have a pesky little brother or sister, that's what the coyote represents, that pesky little brother or sister. And that's, in my family, it's my little brother. And I realized when I heard that story, oh, that's like my little brother, which was cute when he was 5, but now he's 50. No, I take that back. He's 60. He turned 60 this summer. And that's why my little brother lives in Redding, California, and I live in Ventura. So I have more than enough time when he's coming down, if I don't want to be pestered, to go find a tree where he can't find me. So those are my stories. I hope you enjoyed them. I have dozens more. So I hope one day to come to the library live and spend a good hour there just telling stories and maybe teaching a song or two. Tataviam song and maybe a couple Chumash songs, but I want to open it up for some Q&A, and there's no time limit on the Q&A. If you have one or two questions, we'll be through here in a little bit, and we can all. We're going to miss Jeopardy. I hate to tell you guys, we're going to miss Jeopardy, but I'll stay and answer questions as long as you guys have questions. So please ask away. Raise your hand, and we'll let you ask.
Thank you, Alan. Those stories were great. If anyone has any questions, you can use the little reaction button to select raise hand, and I'll be able to unmute you and allow you to ask the questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now, just in case anyone doesn't want to be recorded for this part. So we'll end that at this point, but we'll continue with our questions. Thank you so much.